Hello and welcome to Energizing Habits, simple strategies for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, Vicki Cleary, and I guide ambitious women just like you to find more focus, more energy, and more productivity so they can thrive, whether it's in business or in life, all by tapping into sustainable habit change around nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management. Are you ready? Here we go. Hello and welcome back, my ambitious friends. If you've been tracking any of the previous episodes, you know that it's been almost a full year since I have recorded any episode. And getting COVID last year, well, that's pretty much the reason. It derailed all of my recording plans. I couldn't shake the cough for the longest time, and I didn't think you'd want to hear me hacking through an entire episode. But then after a while, life kind of seemed to move on, right? But I've recommitted to this podcast, and I've even transitioned it over to Spotify. So now you have two places to listen, Spotify, and of course you can still listen on YouTube if you want to. And now last year, before I got sick, I started a 4-part series that I like to call Plan Your Health and Wellness Like a Project Manager. And of course, if you've been tracking the episodes, you know by now that I am a project manager. With more than 17 years of experience, I've been doing lots of different types of managing projects, and in becoming a health coach, starting to manage the projects of health and wellness. So it's kind of a fun way for me to take something that I know and something that I have a real passion for and just merging them together. I'm going to tell you about that more in the next episode when I dig into why I became a health coach. But for now, sticking to our series. So 4-part series, Plan Your Health and Wellness Like a Project Manager. So if you go back and look, episode 20 is part 1, and that is your quarterly action plan, what you might look at on a quarterly basis and how you track against your annual goal. Episode 21 is then part 2, your monthly action plan, focused on your monthly review and what health KPIs you might track at this level to gauge how your efforts are affecting your overall health and whether you're on track for the quarter so that you can make adjustments if needed. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, gosh, this really sounds like a finance type of thing, or budgetary kind of stuff, where you're tracking these things. But while it works for business and finance perfectly fine, it also works quite well with your health and wellness. And that gets us to this episode. Episode 22 is part 3, where we talk about your weekly and your daily action plan. And after kind of thinking about it, reviewing the series, I thought this 3rd segment will probably be the final of the series. I just thought that the 4th, what I had planned, was just probably going to be a little too boring, not enough, interesting enough stuff, I think, for a whole episode. So I thought, the kind of stuff it is, we'll just throw it in a cheat sheet. So it's just a cheat sheet of the different KPIs, the key performance indicators that you can use to track your health and wellness. So little cheat sheet, check the show notes below so you can get the link to that download, direct download. You don't have to sign up for anything, right? So just a fun little document for you. So before we get started, though, if you find that you are frustrated with implementing your habits and you are eager to transform your energy and to achieve your goals, I want to send you my free ultimate habit checklist. So did you know that at least 45% of our daily actions are habitual? At least 45%, right? Could be more. So all of these habits that are going on in our daily lives have the potential to skyrocket our success or to keep us spinning our wheels. I prefer the first one, right? I'd rather skyrocket than spin. So my habit checklist is designed to help you establish vibrant, energy-boosting habits successfully. So get my free habit checklist, check the show notes below for the link, and upgrade your daily routine. Okay. When I created this series, How to Plan Your Health and Wellness Like a Project Manager, I wanted to show you how to build in implementation, accountability, and feedback loops so that you not only have a plan, but you can take consistent action to reach your wellness goals and transform your health and your energy. So today we're going to dig into your weekly review and planning, and then how to set yourself up for success daily. And of course, daily is the level at which you are implementing and updating those habits. And so we really need to stay in touch with creating consistency. Consistency is where we see the progress and results. It's really where the rubber meets the road, if you're, familiar with that analogy. Pause for a quick drink. Talking for quite some, not having done the recording in a while, talking on a long period still drives me out a little bit. All right. So just like with our monthly review, so again, you can go back and listen to the previous podcast, we have some specific KPIs, those key performance indicators to look at weekly, and you'll need to consider how or where you want to track these. So if you can keep all of the tracking in one place, it makes it so much easier to do the tracking, but then also to do the review on a regular basis. So you can choose a digital platform. It could be a spreadsheet, a document, or even a project management tool like ClickUp or Trello. Of course, you can use good old pen and paper. And if you're not sure where to start, just start with simple, whatever's the simplest for you to do, right? Okay, so getting started. So segue into getting started, planning your week. So when you first start this process of regularly checking in on your progress, you actually begin with planning your week based on what your goal is for the month or for the quarter, and what habits you're focusing on integrating, and then also what habits you are trying to continue with. There are 4 key parts here. Part 1 is creating a model calendar. Or an ideal calendar, right? What do you want your week to look like on a regular basis? You could have a few variations here depending on seasons, or maybe alternating, or maybe things happen on alternating weeks or something to that effect. Having that model calendar helps create a layer of consistency. There's that consistency again, and it can make the planning process a bit easier from week to week, right? So I've been doing this for a long time at this point, and having kind of that template, right? So back to project management, never starting from scratch. Having that template makes things easier when you're in the planning process. So part 1, start with a model calendar. And again, you can scratch it out on paper. You can do it in a Google Calendar and have different layers of things, whatever works for you. But start to map out what your general, either ideal week or kind of your standard week is. Part 2 then is, on a weekly basis, you will have your proactive planning date. And you're going to start with your calendar, your model calendar, that plan, that template, and you're going to proactively map your week and then plan out your habits. When are the habits going to happen? Putting them on the calendar and treating them like important meetings will help you be more accountable to them. Now, this process also allows you to optimize your energy and your mindset and plan for your healthy habits and your self-care activities, right? Having a plan for those things so they're not second, afterthoughts, and you can be more successful in making them happen. So part 1, model calendar. Part 2, proactive planning date. Part 3, flexible planning. So as part of your plan, you'll want to have some strategic alternatives for when life throws you a curveball, because it will throw you a curveball. So the name of the game here, of course, is flexible planning, because life is unpredictable, but it shouldn't keep us from achieving our goals, right? So flexible planning is just like how it sounds. You're planning the activities for your week, but with some flexibility. Some of it is the flexibility in how you plan or what you're planning for, but some is the flexibility in your mindset, right? Getting out of that kind of all or nothing thinking, that black and white thinking where, gosh, if it couldn't go according to plan, then I'm just not going to do it this week. I'll start over next week, right? The key is continuing to take action even when things don't go according to plan. So I'm going to give you an example here. And this is something that I continue to cycle back to working on because different things tend to come up, right? And I'm always learning and I'm always iterating this process so that I can get better and better about mitigating these curveballs. So let's say that you want to integrate the habit of working out 3 times per week. If you are used to more rigid planning, you would probably say, all right, I'll work out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And probably like over lunch. You could also choose the evenings, but let's say over lunch for this example. But what happens when a lunch meeting is scheduled or something like butts right up to your lunch that you don't have the time for the travel and stuff to the gym? Do you just scrap the workout for the day and only have 2 workouts for the week? Or worse, scrap the whole plan because it already didn't go the way you wanted it to? That answer is no. You don't just scrap, right? So this is how I use flexible planning in this scenario. So I know that I want to do the workouts 3 times a week. And consistency of schedule does help, right? If you can do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday over lunch, great. But it also doesn't matter when you do that, right? As long as you get it done. So I look at my calendar on Sunday. I do my plannings on Sundays and map out all the meetings and the events that I have scheduled. So those are the known factors. Usually they're less flexible. Those things are usually have to happen when they are. And then I go in and determine where, option A, I want to do my 3 workouts. But then I also create an option B, maybe even option C. So if I want to do them over lunch, great, put them there on the plan. But option B could be, on Mondays, I might be able to work out in the evenings. Wednesdays, I could work out in the mornings, so if things are starting to get chaotic, I could always activate that option. And I could also work out Saturdays and Sundays if I need to. So you can start to see we're creating options, these alternatives, so that if option A can't happen, we have other ways to make the habit happen. Sorry, I was just taking a look at my notes because I didn't want to miss a key point. But so you also have to take into account other things that are going around the things and schedule. The key is getting things on the schedule, which is also why I like to use this method for meal planning. My planning of when I plan my meals for the week, I look at what I have going on and determine when I have time to cook, when we want to plan for leftovers, when we might have a bonus eat out night. And the other thing is that I don't like cooking every night. Well, if you do, great, good for you. But I don't like to. I like to spend my time doing some other things. And so I'll kind of do some batch cooking and try to make a meal last for multiple nights so that some things are just ready to go and you just heat them up. So again, it's just a matter of taking time each week, looking ahead and planning how you're going to integrate your new habits around your current and possibly inflexible activities. All right, so part 1 is creating that model calendar. So again, planning the week, part 1, model calendar. Part 2, proactive planning date. Part 3, flexible planning. And that gets us to part 4, which is your planning session will also include evaluation as you look at the previous week. So regardless of what level you're planning at, daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly, I got those out of order, and that's okay. Regardless of where you're planning at, evaluation is a key component to tracking and achieving your goals. When you evaluate regularly, you're able to see trends, such as where you succeeded and where you struggled in your habit implementation. And this is, of course, one of my favorite ties to project management, where you're looking at what happened and you're pulling out best practices and lessons learned. And I like to use this set of questions. So if you've got a pen and paper, you want to put it in your notes app. Of course, you can come back to this episode and get these questions later. But I like to ask, when you succeeded, what contributed to your success? And can you replicate that on a regular basis? Next question, when you struggled or failed, what contributed to that? Can you find ways to eliminate or mitigate those scenarios? And of course, this is how I coach my clients, and this is the basis of my coaching programs, right? So when we're talking in our groups and one-on-one, I like to start with, okay, what did we learn from the past week? Because that helps us understand how to set up for the next week. In your weekly proactive planning date, you're reviewing the data that you tracked from the previous week to help inform how you plan for the next week. You're looking at your consistency in the implementation, and you're using what you learned to create a better plan for the next week. So your plan is going to iterate from week to week as you find out what really works for you. I'm still iterating from week to week, and I've been using this planning process for probably years at this point. But again, we're always learning, we're always evolving, we're always making things a little bit better based on our experiences. So that's planning your week. Now let's talk about planning your day. So with the weekly plan, you have already greatly improved your success rate, but you're not done. So you need to approach each day with the same priorities and the same mindset so you can stay in the game. This is where the magic happens. Remember, this is where you're starting to actually implement each day. I like to start my day with an intention. I've got some quiet mornings, my warm cup of coffee, and I take a little mini planning session. What needs to happen today? What are my top 3 priorities? And of course, you know your priorities for the day because you've done a weekly plan. So you know a lot of what needs to happen on that specific day. But then it's about being extra intentional to get the things done, to make them happen, to do the habits. Now, I will note here that sometimes some of us would prefer to plan in the evening, right? It's a little bit better for our mental state, so we're not stressing, so we have an idea, or we know what we're doing when we get up in the morning. You can plan the night before if you prefer. You can plan in the morning. It's whatever really that works for you. You might prefer to plan in the morning, but do some of the prep the night before, like your workout bag, your lunch, have them ready to go. You just grab it on your way out the door. Now, as you're planning your days, be sure to balance your work tasks with your health goals. So you're considering all those work tasks that are piling up, but you also want to make sure that you've got the mental capacity and the time capacity to do your health habits. I like to start with the big 3, the top 3 for the day, right? What do I want to accomplish today for work? That could be 3 items, but sometimes it's just 2, and I leave the 3rd item as one of my healthy habits. That way I can be even more sure to get it done. Now, if I get anything done outside of my top 3, that's bonus, right? Gravy on top. But I at least have my top 3 priorities of what I need to focus on for the day. And one of them at least is going to include my healthy self-care. All right, so we've planned for the day. Now let's talk about that implementation, and that includes the tracking. So what data you track over a daily or weekly basis is you can start to determine that in your proactive planning date. You might have already determined it in your goal setting process. But those daily KPIs they could be different than your monthly KPIs. Some things are not quite as valuable to track on a daily basis. It might be a little overkill, like your weight. Stepping on the scale every day to see that fluctuation is not really going to serve you as much as seeing a weight difference over a week or over a month. And I'm going to bring you back to Pearson's Law, which I covered in some of the previous episodes. When performance is measured, performance improves, right? So tracking things, the act of tracking them, helps us be more cognizant, helps us be more accountable to doing the things. But the other part of that law is that when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. So when you do the tracking and pair it with analysis, looking at how you did, what went wrong, what went well, your improvement, your success rate exponentially accelerates. So we're tracking data and evaluating performance so that we can improve more efficiently. Now, if we see something that isn't working in the data, we can analyze it and then tweak the results, tweak the inputs to get the results. And in the case of our wellness, we're tweaking those habits, right? So if we're finding that we're not quite as consistent in drinking the water that we want to drink, what can we do to tweak when the habit happens? What are we drinking out of, or something that helps to encourage us? Can you stack the habit of drinking water with something else, right? There's lots of things that you can do to tweak a habit. But you also are looking to see, is this habit even serving you, right? When I'm looking at what to track on a weekly or daily basis, I'm keeping in mind how I'm optimizing my mind and my body for more energy and more ability to focus using these new habits. And of course, there are some health metrics that can be indicators to your overall wellness, but you don't have to track these forever. Okay, that's the key. So when you start talking about tracking, it's like, oh, do I have to track this forever? Some people will track their meals, right? Their macros, like continuous, like for daily, for into perpetuity. And so you don't need to do that. You're tracking to serve a purpose, to see if something is serving you, to see if you're building that consistency as you learn how to ingrain that habit. So then I take these KPIs, and usually they're based on my pillars, right? So the mindset, sleep, stress management, nutrition, movement, and productivity and workflow. That's how I kind of start to group my things. And of course, I'm going to list these all out in the cheat sheet, so we don't have to get into them all here. So check the link in the show notes. But your chosen habit may have a quantifiable metric, such as tracking water intake each day, or it could be a yes or no action, such as journaling, right? Did I journal or not? And then there's also, on that yes or no thing, there's value in tracking whether you did something or not. So not everything is a quantity, right? 8 ounces of water 8 times a day. Sometimes it's just, did I do it or did I not? And sometimes those are easier to track because usually it's less frequent than however often you're drinking water. Water tends to be one of the ones that is, you're doing a lot more tracking if you're tracking ounces or glasses. But I digress. So you're tracking each time so that you can start to see the patterns in your consistency. So that is why we do the tracking. The more times you perform the habit, the more likely it is to become ingrained in your daily actions. So that is, again, why we track, to see if we're getting it ingrained. And then over time, you don't have to track anymore. That's the goal. But what else can you track when it comes to our health and wellness and having more energy? So we're not just talking about quantitative data here. We're also looking at qualitative data, like feeling good, being energized, being able to focus. And you can turn those into quantitative data by ranking them on a scale from either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. So again, that's just a little dip into some of those things that you can track. Check the cheat sheet for more. But again, as you're starting out, you may not want to track a whole lot of things. You might want to focus in on one specific habit, one specific thing to do daily, and check it off, right? It can get overwhelming if we're tracking all kinds of things all the time. So track the habits, track the metrics that align best with the habits so that you can see how you're starting to implement and how the habit is affecting you. All right, so that is how I plan my week and my days like a project manager. And if you, again, follow the episodes or follow the podcast on a regular basis, you know that I like to have an energizing habit for you to try either today or sometime later this week. So my habit for you is to try making a plan for next week. Where would you prefer your healthy habits to happen? Go through your calendar and see if they align with those, I was going to say your hard-coded events, but it's your calendar. It's not a program. But see if they align with those activities that are already on your calendar, those events that are set in stone, if you will. And then if not, try flexible planning. Where can you find those alternatives to still make sure that those habits can happen? Now, when it comes to implementing habits and making them stick, it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it can feel like we're failing, And so here I want to invite you to my upcoming masterclass. It's this Sunday. So if you're catching the recording and it's past Sunday, still check the show notes because there's going to be a link to the recording that you can still access. So if it's before January 28th, register for the live class, and if it's after, you can get the recording. Either way, you get the recording. But anyway, check the link to get registered or to get the class. But you want this class if you are feeling stuck in the cycle of being unproductive, those unproductive habits. If you want to break free from exhaustion, from brain fog, from your endless to-do list, you want this class if you are ready for an upgrade. You will gain insights and strategies needed to revolutionize your relationship with your habits. We're going to look at not just what you do. We're going to understand the science and the art of habit change. It's kind of a way that I started to explain it because we're empowering you to take charge of your well-being. We're looking at your embedded beliefs and whether or not they're helping or hindering your habits and your progress. We'll look at your individual personality type and how that comes into play. And then again, we're going to consider specific strategies and systems that can work for you when it comes to implementing those habits. So you can register at the website, uplifthealthylifestyle.com, link in the show notes, of course. And that is what I have for you today. If you found this episode helpful, I want to hear from you. So do me a favor, like the episode and take a screenshot and tag me in your Instagram stories at Uplift Healthy. Let's try that again, at Uplift Healthy Lifestyle. I would love to hear how this episode or even how this series is making an impact for you in your health and wellness journey. All right, my friends, have an energized day.